My father, he was a pretty disturbed man. As he got older, he became more narcissistic and sociopathic, and men would leave voice recordings that they were going to kill us, kill our whole family. And I started drinking so heavily, like a bottle of vodka every night. It was bad. What it ended up being is witchcraft. And we were doing rituals where you would bring in an offering and we would be chanting to the yoga gods.
Hey folks, Pete here from Thairish Times. What's the story? How are you doing? I'm not doing too well at the moment. I actually have a head cold for the first time in years. But anyway, today I'm interviewing someone a lot of you will know. Her name is Lilly. And the reason why you'll know her is because she has her own YouTube channel called Lilly's Life, where she documents her life and her family's life in Thailand. And today we're going to hear about Lilly's life story. We're going to deal with some struggles that Lilly had relating to alcohol addiction, as well as many more topics we're going to get into in this interview. So without further ado, let's go meet Lilly. And if you like this content, hit the like button, leave me a comment because it helps out this channel, and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Cheers.
Lilly, how's it going?
It's doing so well. I'm a little bit nervous.
Don't be nervous. This is going to be an excellent chat. I'm looking forward to it.
Amen.
Amen. So tell us, Lilly, where are you from?
I am originally from Maryland, born in Annapolis, which is like Washington, D.C. area of the U.S.
And what was life like growing up for you in the States?
Growing up, my life there was lots of ups and downs. And there was a lot of confusion and a lot of darkness, basically. Yeah, because I grew up in a very dark atmosphere in the home that I lived in. And to really understand that, you would have to understand about my father, who passed away when I was 24 years old. My father, he was a pretty disturbed man. As he got older, he became more narcissistic and sociopathic in his behavior. And he was basically a con man. And his type of manipulative personality had a huge effect over me, over everyone that was close to him, my mom and my sisters. And to understand him, why he became that way, because there was good parts about him too. He was also a very loving father in many ways. And I had a good relationship with him in a lot of ways. He wasn't a protective father. He didn't really know how to be a father. And that's because of his father. So my grandfather, he started developing schizophrenia a year after he met my grandmother when they were in their 20s. He was like 20 years old. He started hearing voices and started to act like violent in his behavior. And this was in the 1950s. And he ended up going to a mental hospital, and he was basically in the mental hospital for 10 years getting electroshock therapy. And by the time he was finally released, he had the mind of a 3-year-old. And so my dad never had a real father. And when my grandfather was released, I think my father got teased heavily for the behavior of my grandfather, because my grandfather couldn't work. You could tell that there was something wrong with him. And so my dad never had, a father. And then my dad didn't know how to be a father. And growing up, the house that we lived in had a really dark spiritual energy. I know a lot of people don't believe in the spiritual realm, but something entered our house by our aunt. There was like a poltergeist activity that happened to my aunt, where she had poltergeist in her house and she was trying to get away from it, and she asked my dad to come over, and she came over and the poltergeist followed her, and there was some activity in our house after that. And after that, it was like things got really worse for my dad, and he became increasingly just making horrible decisions. He ended up committing fraud, stealing people's money. He was trying to renovate this house, and he got arrested and for fraud. He never could complete the house. We went bankrupt. And he was doing just a lot of things that were, I don't know, a lot of this stuff I put out of my mind and I compartmentalized it, and I didn't even have any really memory of it until about 5 years ago when all the memories came back, and God has taken me through a process of healing.
How did your dad's behavior impact on your life?
Well, it was really confusing because my mom had to work so hard because my dad wouldn't work, especially after he was arrested. He had this criminal record, and so he said he couldn't get it to be hired. So my mom had to work so hard for us. And so then my mom wasn't there for us like she could have been because she was working so hard. And my dad, he tried to play the role of our mother. And so then we had never had a father, but thankfully, my stepfather, George, he came into the picture and he really changed our whole life, and he is my father now. The most traumatic things that happened, which is like this whole story, a lot of people don't know this about me because I don't talk about it on my YouTube channel because it's like my YouTube channel is more positive and uplifting. But my dad, during the height of his like chaotic mental breakdown and confusion in this house that we lived in, he was hiring ex-convicts to help him do this work, doing construction. And he was embezzling money. And so for a whole year, 2 years, we lived in a house where the phone was constantly ringing. The phone was constantly ringing, and then we had a rule, don't answer the phone. So always hearing the phone ring and not being able to answer it. And when you had back in those days, the voice recorder where people could leave voice recordings out loud and you could hear them. And men would leave voice recordings that they were going to kill us, kill our whole family, death threats. And when that happened one time pretty bad when my mom was there, and my mom got us all out of the house. We like ran through the woods to hide from these guys that we thought were going to come kill us. And then it happened when my mom was at work and my dad was there, and my dad said, okay, girls, just go upstairs and don't leave. If somebody comes and answers the door, don't answer it. And he left the house. And then these men came and started banging on the door. He
left the house and left you guys there?
He left us, me, Chloe, and Marcy, my older sister and younger sister. And he left us. And then they kept starting to bang down the door, and my older sister hid us in the closet, and we were all hiding there. And then all of a sudden, Marcy just gets up and goes out, and she said, just be quiet, don't say anything. And she goes and opens the door and says, please, my dad's not here, just leave us alone, please. And then they left.
Talk us through your life, say your teenage years up until your early 20s.
Okay, so my teenage years, my dad continued, I would go up be with my dad part-time and my mom part-time, and when I was with my mom and George, that was stable. But when I was with my dad, I could drink, I could party. My sister would have these big parties. So I started drinking and experimenting with drugs when I was like 13, 14 years old. And that put me down a path of just really wanting to drink and party all the time. At the same time, I did really well in school. So I was always able to balance it because I had this whole thing where I wanted to do well in school and make money and never go through the pain that I went through as a child. The embarrassment of my dad being arrested. We're on the front cover of the news, the newspaper, my dad being arrested. And that was so traumatizing, the humiliation. So I always wanted to work really hard and do well in school because I thought that was my ticket out. But then I was drinking a lot. So it was there's two personalities there going on, two dynamics.
And what kind of drinking? How much are we talking here? Every day? No, just on the weekends. So I would do well, really focused on school and then go out on the weekends. And then my senior year, I was an exchange student in France. So that gave me a time of being completely away from it. But then when I came back from that, it was wow, the temptation and all the drinking really got bad. But then I got back into university, and I got with my partner of 10 years, Mike, who I ended up opening our restaurant in New Orleans with. And I was able to really stay balanced throughout the university because of how hard I worked in school. And I just would drink on the weekends pretty much. So you finished university and you opened a restaurant. What was that like?
So I finished university and then we moved to New Orleans. That's where my mom and George and younger sister and brother were living in New Orleans. So as soon as I graduated, the day after we moved to New Orleans and we both got jobs working at the best restaurants and we wanted to open a restaurant, I had this decision, like, that's how I'm going to make money. That's how I'm going to, that's the best way of making money. I was going to go to law school, but I decided not to go open the restaurant. I had the whole name Coquette already in my mind. I dreamed of this restaurant. We found the location and we fell in love with the location, and we knew that this location would be ours one day, but it took a year and a half for us to get it. And it really just fell into our lap when we got it. And it was like our destiny, this restaurant.
So how long did you have this restaurant for?
Well, the thing is about the restaurant, I was 24 years old when we opened it. And 2 months before the restaurant opened, my dad passed away. And he didn't just pass away. He first had open heart surgery, which my sisters and I convinced him to get because he didn't want to get it. 2 months later, he had a brain aneurysm and he became like a vegetable. And they told us, we recommend you taking him off life support. And so it was my sisters and I that had to make that decision of taking him off life support. And that really was so had such a huge effect on me. Like we were just so quick to take him off the life support because we didn't know how to deal with it, like the emotional trauma of that. And then we had to go clean out his storage units. He had all these storage units. He was living out of his car. He was living in a really like mentally ill situation. And I was so angry at him after that because I found out he had done some really bad things to my grandmother, how he had like stole her identity, and she almost was arrested when she was like 80 years old, and she had been living in government, like a government apartment building, like really poor. And I was so angry at him. And then I had to open the restaurant, and I decided like, I am just going to take all of these emotions and just not think about it because I have to open this restaurant. And I have to get this to be a success. We had such a small loan. And so that's what I did. I just compartmentalized it and opened the restaurant. And this building also had like a spiritual energy into it. It's in New Orleans. This building is about 125 years old. There were stories that people would come in and tell us about how Lee Harvey Oswald used to live here before he assassinated JFK. If people don't know who Lee Harvey Oswald is, he's the supposed assassinator of JFK. So this restaurant was haunted. I mean, people would tell us like, oh, we could feel things, and we would sit at the bar. It had a long, beautiful bar, and we would be sitting there late at night drinking, and then we'd hear stomping upstairs, or like bottles of wine would fly off the shelves. And then we'd like leave real quick. And I started drinking so heavily, like a bottle of vodka every night. Like it was bad. And I was starting to have panic attacks every time I came into the restaurant. I couldn't come into the restaurant without drinking.
Was the drinking a way just to cover up all the pain and the hurt?
Yeah. So I could black out and not go, when you lay your head down and you don't want to think about everything, to black out every night.
And how long did it go until, was there a breaking point where I have to stop?
I knew I was an alcoholic. I knew I needed help. I tried to call some rehab centers, but they were full. And my partner, Mike, he didn't know what to do with it. He was trying to run the restaurant. And finally I found out like, oh, if I get on this drug called Anabuse, that this drug, if you take, this is where they give, I don't know, they give people who have had problems with alcohol this drug. You take it in the morning, and if you drink anything, you get sick. You can't drink on it. So I just got prescribed. I went to the doctor and I said, can I get prescribed this medicine? I can't afford rehab. I just need this medicine. And I would take it in the morning, and I couldn't drink. And then that medicine got me sober for 2 weeks. And then I didn't have to keep taking it. I got sober. I knew like I couldn't drink. I was like scared to drink after that. I got sober for about 1.5 years after that, but I was smoking marijuana heavily.
So you substituted one drug for another?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And I was like locked away in I eventually had this high-rise apartment, and I just locked myself away, and I couldn't be around anyone. I didn't have any friends. I just had my 2 dogs that I would walk, and it was horrible. I thought I would never get out of that situation. And then the ironic thing is the restaurant was exploding and we were having celebrities come eat there all the time. And the restaurant was so successful. So I had this like restaurant that was mine. I opened, and I was such a failure on the inside. Like, I had no friends. I had no one to communicate it to. I couldn't even go to a psychiatrist because when I tried to go to a psychiatrist, I had this voice in my head which would say, don't tell them anything or you're going to end up like your grandfather. So I've been hearing voices. I had been hearing voices in my head for a long time, like from when I was 11 years old.
We'll go back. You're smoking marijuana and you're locked away in the apartment. What happens then? So then I'm like, okay, I was going to a psychiatrist to get prescribed like antidepressants and some other things, but I never really liked taking those. But she suggested, why don't you start doing yoga? So it took weeks, maybe months to get the courage up just to go to a yoga class. But I went to a yoga class and I really hated it. I hated everything, but at least it was something I could get around people and I didn't have to talk to them. So it was really good that way, that I could be in a room with other people and I didn't have to say, who I am, that I own this restaurant. And so that was a blessing. And the yoga thing, like after that, I just kept going. And then they had this yoga philosophy class where they taught about the Hinduism part of yoga and the spiritual side of yoga. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to sign up for that. And that took a lot of courage to go. And I went to this lady's house who ended up becoming my guru. And she taught us that, through this path of yoga, you can gain superpowers and you can be like a god and you can create your own reality and your own universe. So I was like, that's what I want. I want to be a god. I want to create my own universe and I'll create my own world where I'm not an alcoholic. And then I can get back into the restaurant and all I really wanted to do, I thought, was just to get back in the restaurant. And is that what happened? No, I never got back in the restaurant. I tried, but it didn't happen. But I got really into yoga. So I became this yoga hippie girl, and I started doing all these yoga, Reiki, all of these different workshops. Any workshop there was, tarot card readings, energy work, and I got opened up to the spiritual side of yoga. And what it ended up being is witchcraft. Basically, this yoga teacher who was really into Hinduism, I signed up for a 6-month yoga teacher training, and we were doing rituals where you would bring in an offering and you'd sit around the fire, that she'd build this fire, and we would be chanting to the yoga gods, and we'd be throwing our offerings in, and we'd be making intentions, things that we wanted to happen. And it seemed like everything was like, going like exactly how I wanted it. And I was drinking again at this point, but it was like I had a higher tolerance now. So I would do the yoga, and then I could go out and drink, and I wouldn't black out, and I would stay in control more. I wouldn't be so sloppy like before. But then my relationship started to fall, like get really, really toxic, really bad. My relationships were getting really bad with Mike and with even some of my family. How old are you now at this stage? About 27. Okay. And I was seeing some dark things in the yoga, like people acting, like hearing dark stories about like people getting possessed by certain things. Like in the Reiki class, there was a story of a woman getting possessed for a few hours. And then I went on this yoga retreat in Mexico, and then there's something kind of scary happened there. And I was with my sister, Chloe. And so I was seeing these dark things, but because of my past and the past of darkness that I grew up in, I didn't realize, put any connection, maybe what I'm doing, these doors that I'm opening with these rituals. And I got really into the chanting part, the singing and the invocation of the spiritual realm. That's what was one of my favorite parts of the yoga, because it gave me a high, like a real spiritual high. Well, there's a lot going on here. It's definitely fast paced. And it's so hard to tell about all the details, because there are some details, but well, I understand if you don't want to go into super in depth. It would take us too long, I think. Okay. So I'm curious to know, like, what was the move over from America to Thailand? How'd that happen?
Okay, so at the same time that I was doing the yoga, I met this man named Dr. Quang, who had a little acupuncture studio, and he's from Vietnam, a Vietnamese acupuncturist. And he would take volunteers to Vietnam. And I started apprenticing with him, learning about acupuncture. I said, Lily, you need to come to Vietnam. I'm about to go on this trip. And my relationship with Mike was falling apart so bad. It was like I needed to get out of there. And my parents told me, you need to go. And I'm trying to figure out how to completely close every door because we owned the restaurant together. So it wasn't easy. And then I signed up to go to Vietnam with Dr. Quang, and that changed my whole life because I was so scared and I had been so emotionally attached to Mike, and Mike pretty much did everything for me. And I was a very dependent relationship, and it was a very toxic relationship. I was really toxic for him and he was toxic for me. So we went our separate ways, and I went to Vietnam, and that changed my whole life. I saw like the most poor. I was living a very privileged lifestyle in New Orleans. And then I went from that to seeing like the most poor, rural, like even urban areas of Vietnam with Dr. Quang, and seeing how like, it just blew my mind and pushed me to my limits, like with the living conditions that we were experiencing. We were sleeping out in the DMZ zone with these communist soldiers one night. And then we were sleeping in a house that was filled with rats another night. And it was really like, wow.
So you're in Vietnam with Dr. Quang. Uh-huh. And did you take a holiday to Thailand or?
And then I was like, I'm not ready to come back to New Orleans. So I extended my stay, went through Cambodia, then came into Thailand. This guy I met, he was Irish, actually. I always like Irish. And he said, oh, why don't you go to Koh Samui? It's way better than Bangkok. And I said, okay, well, I'll just go to Koh Samui then. And then we went to Koh Samui, and I rented a little bungalow on the beach. And that same morning that I arrived, because I took a night bus, and I walked down the beach and I met my husband, Wat. He became my husband, and we fell in love, and he's Thai, and he showed me around Koh Samui, and yeah, he showed me around Thailand.
Did you say that was your first night in Koh Samui that you met him?
Yeah, the first couple hours, actually.
Wow, and that really changed the course of your life completely.
Yeah, it was like destiny. God brought me to him.
So then you decided, I'm going to stay in Thailand.
Not really. I decided I needed to go back to New Orleans and get everything out. And I was going to try to live in Santa Fe, Arizona. But then I went back and I told my mom that I met Watt, and she was like, you just go back to Thailand. And I said, oh, okay. And I went back to Thailand. And then my mom came after a couple months later, and we started a clothing business together. And then I ended up opening a yoga studio, because that was the whole thing, and continuing on my path of manifestation.
And this was 9 years ago.
This was 9 years ago, yeah.
And then talk about your life in Koh Samui. So you were doing that for a couple of years, but you opened a restaurant as well.
Yeah, because I had the building. So I had the yoga upstairs and the restaurant downstairs. First it was a clothing shop, then we turned it into a restaurant. And the first year I was just basically at Watt's Beach Bar, just really drinking too much and living this party lifestyle. Then I was like, really, I need to focus more on the yoga, stop drinking so much, And I was doing a lot of retreats, because my teacher, my guru from New Orleans, she would come to Bali and to India, and she came even to Thailand and did a retreat at my place. And I would go follow her and join her on these retreats. And so then I kept seeing other things. And then some of the things that I was seeing and experiencing on these retreats were like, I don't know if this is like right. Something felt a little bit off. My eyes were starting to be open to things are not really right. And at the same time, I was really interested in finding the truth, because I always knew that there's something wrong with me. And I knew that, there's something really deeply wrong with me. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. So in a way to try to find control over it, I was searching about what was wrong with the world. So I was really interested in finding the truth about how the world works and who runs the world. And I got me into like documentaries, into information about like the monetary system and who controls the money of the world. And then it led me down different rabbit holes of like the food industry and Monsanto and, and like the corruption corruption and even like big pharma and all of these things that like, wow, this world is like not what we're really taught in school. There's something wrong with this world, and it's a pretty upside down how it really is when people really start to look into it.
So you said you started researching the world instead of researching yourself. Did you switch back to yourself then?
So it was like this. It was like these two dynamics going. So this started happening in New Orleans, where I got into really like who controls the world and what's going on. So there was like this dark dynamic of, wow, this world is really messed up. And then this balancing it out with, oh, it doesn't matter. Just keep your eye on the positive, focus on the positive. You're going to manifest your own reality. And if you believe that, then you're going to create your own reality. So it was like two dynamics going, two different personalities going, until finally, after so many retreats with my teacher and her telling me things like, we were with the Hare Krishnas in India, and singing Krishna, Hare Krishna. And I asked the Krishnas, who is the most powerful God? Because my teacher told me to chant to Shiva. That was like the god of yoga. And I've been chanting to Shiva for a long time. And that's the god of death and destruction in Hinduism. And so I asked the Krishna guy, who's the most powerful God, Shiva or Krishna? And he said, oh, well, we believe that Krishna is the most powerful God and everything is below him. And then my teacher said to me, I was chanting to Shiva a lot. And then I noticed quite a few people around me were dying. So I switched and started to chant to Krishna, and he's much sweeter. And when she said that, I was like, what? Did she just say that? Like, people weren't dying because you're chanting to Shiva. I thought that was kind of like almost egotistical of her.
Okay.
But then I went to Bali. Well, things got really bad again, like in my life, like really bad. I was getting really, looking back about the person I used to be, it got really toxic. After that India trip, I started drinking again, and things in my life were falling apart. Everything seemed to be falling so far apart. And I went to Bali a year later from that. And there in Bali, I also learned about the spiritual realm, and because like there's all these statues there and they're always giving offerings to the statues. And I met some people, and this one girl in particular telling me about this shamanic work class that she was in. And in this shamanic class, one of the girls had died in the class. And the girls it's a long story, but she was telling me how like she woke up at night and felt entities around her trying to kill her. And yeah, so I was like starting to open up to there's a dark world. There's a dark side to all these things that I'm doing and that was going on. And then I came back again and I was sober, and then I went to Bali again with Watt, and Watt got really, really sick, and he seemed like he was under a lot of attack there. And then we had to leave early. And I was in the taxi with this taxi driver, this Balinese taxi driver. And I started talking to him about the world and how the world works and all these things. And then I asked him about witchcraft. And I said, is there witchcraft here in Bali? And he said, oh yeah, there's lots of witchcraft. He said, mantra, chanting. He said, that can kill somebody. And I was like, what? And I kept repeating that in my mind. For some reason that like went into me, that could kill somebody. And I was just like, wow. I didn't know that mantra could kill someone. And then that same day we got back to Thailand, and we got back to Mae Nam, and then I found out something really bad had happened. And there had been a guy that was always sitting across my building at this other restaurant, and he was murdered by 3 other men who lived on our little street of Mae Nam.
A Thai guy?
A foreigner, French guy, and he was murdered by 3 other French guys. They had all lived on our street, our tiny little street.
Why did they murder him?
It was like some dispute over money, I guess. But it made international news. And he was murdered the same day that we left to go to Bali. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is the universe trying to tell me? And it was like a whole like everything opened. The scales of my eyes were lifted, and everything came flooding in. The memories of my teacher saying, oh, in India, how she would chant to Shiva, and a lot of these people were dying around her. And then my friend telling me in Bali about how this girl died in her workshop, and how that same day, this Balinese taxi driver told me that by chanting mantra, you can kill someone. And I had been chanting to Shiva, the god of death and destruction, for so long with a harmonium, this instrument that I got from India. And I felt like, wow, like I have been invoking something not good. And then I realized, I've been searching for heaven this whole time, the gift of eternal life this whole time. And this whole deception, this whole journey of trauma and horrible darkness that I've been on, I guess God had a reason for it. And I get to go to heaven after this. And that comfort of knowing, wow, this is it. And to know a God and to know the truth. And then that started me on like, yeah, learning how to develop a relationship with God. And I started talking about God all the time to Watt, and it would drive Watt crazy. And we would drive around the island, and I would just talk about Jesus. And he'd be like, stop talking about Jesus. And then we went to church for the first time, and he was like, wow, it's like a concert, and you could feel the Holy Spirit. And he really loved it. And like, I would just cry, and I just cried to God. Thank you, Lord. Thank you for giving me this new life. And then we decided, then the pastor was like, do you want to get baptized? And Juan and I both got baptized together. Like, he really started to believe, and he was never really a strong Buddhist. So yeah, he accepted Jesus. And then right after we got baptized, I found out that I was pregnant with Luke. And that was such a blessing to both of us, especially to Watt, because Watt had really wanted children.
Have you quit drinking now?
Yeah, it's been 3 years since I've been sober. So I fell off the wagon a couple times after I found God, because like I went under, like, you have to learn as a believer that you're going to be you're called to be a soldier, and you have to learn how to do spiritual warfare, basically, and learn that people will come and betray you. People will come against you. It is not an easy path. Like, if I said it was easy, then that would be a lie. But it's the path of truth. And so in these difficult times that I faced as a believer, I ended up turning to alcohol. But God cleansed me of that. I would get on my knees and I just pray, God, deliver me of this. And then I got delivered. And the last time I drank was 3 years ago. And after that, I knew God had the power to supernaturally take this from me. And he did. And I haven't had a single thought of drinking alcohol in 3 years. Not even like a desire for it at all. And before I would get those desires, and I haven't been into any AA meetings or anything. That was just God. It was like, okay, it's over now.
Do you go out to bars? Are you in that environment?
Yeah.
And you still don't have any desire to drink?
Do I go out to bars? It's kind of different in Koh Samui because it's kind of open, you know? So I go to like, I go to like areas where people are drinking heavily, so I can go to bring the light and talk to them about God. I do a lot of witnessing. That's what people don't see from my YouTube channel. Like,
could you go out and be with other people that are drinking and you just drink Coke or whatever?
I just drink soda water.
Soda water. And you're fine with that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
And that wasn't like that before. It wasn't like that the first couple of years. I could feel the thoughts, like the desire coming in.
And there's no other addictions?
No.
Well, let's switch it to your relationship now, if that's okay, because you're married to Watt, and we've all seen him on your channel. Mm-hmm. Seems like a really nice guy, genuine guy, good father, takes care of the kids really well. You can see it in the videos. When you guys got together, were there any like cultural differences, East meets West, that you had to overcome?
I mean, there's communication issues sometimes, yeah. But it's okay. There's issues with everyone. One
of the differences that I noticed was that my wife is a little bit more spontaneous, and I'm more planned. I like to plan out for the future. That's what I noticed too. There's pros and cons of both. Because I always would be like, oh, well, let's do this on Friday night. And I would be like, why would you even talk about that? It's Wednesday. Like, why would you plan out? Yeah. Because they don't plan out anything. You don't even plan out going to a friend's house. You just show up and knock on the door, or not even knock on the door, walk in. So how about your YouTube channel then? Because it's really blown up. I mean, I remember watching your channel when you had about 5,000 subscribers. It was during COVID. It was 2020, and you just started. And I was watching it. I think you were daily vlogging in Koh Samui at that stage. I was watching your vlogs. And I was like, wow, look at this. And I was like, will I start a channel? You know, I was seeing all these other YouTubers, I was watching it all, and I was like, it felt like we were all in the same boat, because we were all in Thailand, we're all going through the same thing with COVID going on. But since then, it's just blown up. I mean, you are getting, like, for a Western vlogger, I think you're number one for views.
I think it's going steady, you know what I mean? It's better to go steady and have that loyal fan base than...
I mean, it's very successful. You can't say it's not. Yeah, it's super successful channel. Was there a moment where it just, like a switch, where when everything just started going viral?
When my mom came to visit. Because I had stopped vlogging for 3 months. I needed to take a break from it because it was becoming a... what's it called? An obsession. And it was like distracting me from things that I needed to focus on. And then my mom came and we started vlogging together, and we would go to all these 5-star hotels, which were really cheap at the time because it was during COVID. My mom did that 14-day quarantine to come see me. And I was vlogging with her. Then we took the train, and then all of a sudden it started going up, the train, because that was like all of a sudden Thailand travel video. And then we got to Bangkok. Then I got to Bangkok videos, and then I did saying goodbye to my mom, which was really emotional. And I think that that was when it got really triggered. And I was gaining like 3,000 subscribers a day for like 2 weeks. I was like, unbelievable.
Wow.
It was so exciting. That was so exciting.
It's interesting that you say obsession.
Yeah. Because
it is kind of an obsession that you can get caught up in it too much, I think.
Yeah, because people don't understand the side of the analytics and how that is, what's it called, that feeds that dopamine response. And like, you get a high when you hit a #1 video, and then when nobody watches your videos and you start to feel, oh, why doesn't anybody care about me anymore? You know, especially if it's about the content is based on you, you start to feel bad. But that's why you have to put out videos that you're proud of and you like doing. And it doesn't matter if it's #1 or #10. And, you know that your self-worth doesn't come from the content you're creating. The good thing about my channel is that I don't have to think of any concept, really. I'm just like, okay, you guys have to be happy. We have to be happy and go out and do something fun. That's all we have to do. You know, like, yeah. Or even sometimes just stay home. It doesn't have to be that.
I think that's what makes your channel very unique, where you just document everything that happens in your life, good or bad. You show it all. Yeah. And I think that, you know, it's definitely one of the reasons why you've been so successful, because you put it all out there. I mean, we've seen you cry. Yeah. You know, when your mom was leaving, that was a really emotional, because I think anyone who lives abroad knows what it feels like, you know, to separate from your family and know that you don't know how long it's going to be until you see them again. Yeah. Trolls. How do you handle the trolls?
Sometimes they can get to you, to be honest, because in the first, they really start to come out after 50,000. They really, because people are jealous, I guess, and they're just haters. It's not easy. How do I get through it? Just by going back to God and realizing I'm putting my identity too much into this and to care about what people think, and like, I don't know.
I have a good strategy for you. I interviewed
Retired Working For You?
Retired Working For You. And he went off.
I know. I love what he said about trolls. He's like, they're just sitting in the corner of the bar.
Yeah, that's what he said. He's sitting over in the corner of the bar. They wouldn't talk to you. I was like, that's true. Then there was another lady I interviewed, Mint, from her channel I Roam Alone. She's got like millions of subscribers. And I said to her, how do you handle the trolls? Because she had like a big scandal over here. Yeah. And a lot of people really went after her. And she said, what I do is I separate the brand. If someone compliments me, they compliment the brand. Yeah. They don't compliment me. So I don't personally attach myself to the channel. Yeah. I thought that's a pretty good strategy to get over it, you know?
Yeah, but it's hard. It's different because it's just her. And I don't usually care that much when they attack me, but when they attack my kids or my husband, like, it's harder, you know? And because I am showing more reality, she is showing different things, you know? She is like more of a, I don't know, it's just different. Like the other day, someone just said, oh, your boys are so undisciplined. And like, I was like, oh. It's the small ones. Like if something's really viciously mean, I don't really get upset that much about it. Cause I'm like, this is just ridiculous. But I hardly ever block anyone unless it's like really bad. Like I hardly ever block people.
Why not?
Because I figure one day something's going to touch their heart and they're going to have a come to Jesus moment and maybe I could help them.
So how about your life in Thailand? You've moved to Bangkok now. How long are you here for?
Maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure.
It could be long term.
I really love Bangkok, but I don't think we'll be here necessarily long term. I'm just really tired of being on an island. So maybe Chiang Mai, maybe some other places. You
come across to me as a risk taker. You are an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So are you happy?
Oh, I'm a risk taker.
You like taking risks.
I go all the way in. Like my Nam, we and I are talking. Nam likes to sit on the fence and just, should I go in or go not? Me, I'm like all the way in. I go 100%. That's why I went 100% into the yoga and the Hinduism and all that stuff.
You're 100% in on YouTube.
And then, I went 100%.
But it worked out for you.
I'm like, this has been put in my lap. I'm not just going to do a little bit and then I look at it as a business. Because I've had that business mentality, and that's why sometimes I put I do try to do thumbnails or titles that will try to get me more subscribers. And some people don't like that, but that's only 2.5% people who don't like my thumbnails or my titles. I'm leaving my Thai husband and going to America. I don't know why people would have a problem with that, because I did leave him and I go to America.
Yeah, but you're able to market your channel. I mean, that's what it is. It's marketing. And
by doing those type of titles, I was able, from that video, getting 18,000 new subscribers from that video. You have to do stuff like that to expand your audience.
Yeah, you have to take risks. Even coming to Bangkok is a new risk.
Yeah.
Because you're leaving Samui. A lot of people would maybe follow you because you're on an island.
Yeah.
Now you're in a city, so it's another risk. But I think it'll pay off. I mean,
well, you know what?
It has paid off.
When you have to be inspired to make videos, right? It got really uninspiring doing the same type of stuff all the time on an island,
You have to keep it fresh for yourself to keep motivated.
Yeah.
It's like any job. Do you ever feel like you're under pressure that you need to keep uploading and does it ever become just too much, draining, your lack of creativity?
Yeah.
You ever have those moments?
Yeah, especially the last couple months in Koh Samui. I got hacked on my Facebook, and then I got really so much paranoia because everybody was sending me messages that they're going to hack everything, and I was so overwhelming, this hacking situation.
You find a book in a forest, okay? The book has Lily's life written on it, right? And chapter 1 is the day you're born. You read chapter 1, you read chapter 2, chapter 3. You get up to chapter 10, and it's this moment right now, doing an interview with Pete from Thairish Times.
Yeah.
Do you stop at chapter 10, or do you read on chapter 11, 12, 13 and know your future?
No, I stop.
Yeah?
I definitely stop.
What if you could read on and then change? Would you do that?
No. I don't want to know my future. Because I know it's going to be big.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Could you ever see yourself moving back to the States?
No.
No, you're here in Thailand for the long haul. Yeah? What would happen, say, if... Because YouTube, it can be quite fickle. What would happen if just everything just started slowing down gradually, views, subs drop, slow?
Yeah.
What would be the next move?
Well, I'm not really sure. I have a book that I want to write. I want to keep promoting my clothing business I have with my mom. And I depend on I just believe God is going to, if YouTube closed, that door closes, God's going to have another door open. I do sermons sometimes at the church. I give a message at the church. So going into ministry and doing that full time, that's wherever God wants me.
Lily, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Really, really interesting. Thank you very much for telling your story. So folks, if you enjoyed that, hit the like button, leave us a comment, let us know what you thought of the interview, and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Thanks very much, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care of yourselves.